The courtroom fell silent as Maya wheeled herself toward the judge. Her legs hadn't worked in 3 years, not since the accident that changed everything. She could feel the stare, some pitying, some curious, some judgmental. Most burning of all was the gaze of her soon-to-be ex-husband, Richard, standing next to his glamorous mistress, Victoria. They were dressed in matching designer outfits, their fingers intertwined like teenagers in love. Maya had once held that same hand, felt those same fingers wrapped around hers. Now, he couldn't even look her in the eye. The wheelchair felt especially heavy today. Maya had chosen to wear her hair in neat box braids, pulled back into a sophisticated updo. Her mother had always told her to show up looking your best when facing your worst days. The pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother caught the light as she moved, a reminder of the strength of the women who came before her. Despite everything, Maya had taken extra care with her appearance to dye a fitted navy dress that complemented her deep brown skin, subtle makeup that highlighted her high cheekbones and expressive eyes. Not for Richard's benefit, but for her own. Around her neck hung the small gold pendant her father had given her when she graduated law school. Justice. Always, he had whispered when clasping it. The irony wasn't lost on her now, as she prepared to finalize this mockery of justice. Her marriage was ending not with tears but with a secret smile that confused everyone in the room. "Mrs. Hayes, you've agreed to all terms of the divorce, including the division of assets as outlined in these documents?" The judge peered over her glasses, her tone suggesting she found the settlement unusual. Most disabled wives fighting billionaire husbands didn't smile while signing away their rights to substantial alimony. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm perfectly satisfied with the terms." Maya's voice was steady, her smile genuine. Her lawyer had called her crazy. Her friends had begged her to reconsider. But Maya knew something they didn't. Her best friend Tanisha had cornered her just yesterday. "Girl, have you lost your mind? That man is worth billions, and you're walking away with pocket change after what he did to you?" But some things were worth more than money. Like the truth. Like justice. As Richard signed the final papers with a flourish, his mistress Victoria squeezed his arm possessively. In just a few hours, they would be married in a lavish ceremony that had been planned for months. The wedding that would cement Victoria's place in high society and give her access to the Hayes fortune, or what remained of it. Victoria cast a triumphant glance in Maya's direction. Her white skin practically glowed with victory, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. She was everything Maya wasn't, at least on the surface. Where Maya was thoughtful, Victoria was impulsive. Where Maya valued substance, Victoria chased style. And where Maya had built her career exposing frauds, Victoria had made a career of being one. "Then by the power vested in me by the state, this marriage is dissolved." The judge's gavel came down with a crack that should have broken Maya's heart, but instead, it set her free. As Maya wheeled past Richard and Victoria, she paused just long enough to whisper, "Congratulations on your wedding. I do hope you've both done your due diligence." The confusion that flickered across Richard's face was worth everything she had endured. Maya rolled out of the courthouse alone, into the bright sunshine. She checked her watch, just 3 more hours, until everything Richard and Victoria thought they knew would come crashing down. 3 hours until the truth would be revealed. She took a deep breath of the spring air, letting it fill her lungs. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "Baby girl, sometimes you gotta lose to win." Nana had grown up in the segregated South, had seen injustice up close. had taught Maya that patience was sometimes the most powerful weapon in an unfair world. And Maya would be there to watch it all unfold, with the same smile she'd worn in court 3 years earlier. "I've never seen anyone so fearless," Richard Hayes said, watching Maya climb down from the charity skydiving event. Her cheeks were flushed with adrenaline, eyes sparkling with life. "Most people in finance are boring as hell, but you're something else. Coming from Boston's most eligible billionaire." "I'll take that as a compliment," Maya replied, removing her helmet. She hadn't expected to meet anyone at the charity event, let alone Richard Haystack, innovator, philanthropist, and according to every magazine, the catch of the decade. The April day was unseasonably warm, the kind that promised summer wasn't far behind. Maya Johnson had agreed to the charity skydive to honor her brother Marcus, who had died of leukemia 3 years earlier. The event raised money for cancer research, and Maya had been the top fundraiser, leveraging her connections in Boston's financial world to gather an impressive sum. That attention was probably what had put her on Richard's radar. "Have dinner with me," he said simply. It wasn't a question, but it wasn't quite a command either. Maya studied him. At 35, Richard Hayes had built an empire from a single innovative app that helped people invest their spare change. Now Hayes Innovations was worth billions, with Richard at the helm of a dozen successful ventures. He was handsome in a clean-cut way, nothing flashy, just confident competence in an expensive suit. His blue eyes contrasted with his dark brown hair in a way that photographers loved to capture for the covers of business magazines. "I have a rule about dating clients," Maya said. As a financial fraud investigator for one of Boston's top firms, she had seen too many relationships complicate business. She was known as the best in her field, with a knack for spotting inconsistencies that others missed. Her colleagues joked that she could smell a financial scam from miles away. "I'm not your client." Richard's smile was warm. Not yet, anyway. There was something charming about his confidence, the way he seemed completely at ease in his own skin. Maya had dated successful men before, but there was often an undercurrent of insecurity beneath their accomplishments. Richard seemed different. "I'll think about it," she said, deliberately not giving him an immediate yes. Her mother had taught her that. "Never seem too eager, Maya. Make them work for your attention." "I'll take that as a promising start," Richard replied, handing her his card with his personal number scrawled on the back. "I'm having dinner at Soralina tomorrow at 8. I hope to see you there." That night, Maya called her best friend Tanisha for advice. "Girl, are you serious? Richard Hayes asked you out and you're actually debating it?" Tanisha's laughter bubbled through the phone. "If you don't go, I'm going in your place." "He's a potential client," Maya protested, though she was already mentally reviewing her wardrobe for something suitable. "It could get complicated." "Life is complicated," Tanisha replied. "But opportunities like this are rare. You've been working non-stop since Marcus died. Maybe it's time to let someone in." The mention of her brother sobered Maya. Marcus had always encouraged her to take risks, to live fully. "You can't control everything, M., he would say, using his childhood nickname for her. "Sometimes you just gotta jump." She had jumped out of a plane today. Maybe dinner with Richard Hayes wasn't so scary in comparison. The next evening she arrived at Soralina 15 minutes late, just enough to make an entrance but not enough to be rude. The maitre led her to a secluded table where Richard waited, standing when he saw her approach. "You came," he said, genuine pleasure warming his voice. "I wasn't sure you would." "I was in the neighborhood," Maya replied with a smile, accepting the chair he pulled out for her. She had chosen a deep burgundy dress that complemented her dark skin, and she didn't miss the appreciation in Richard's eyes. That night over dinner, Maya learned that beneath the polished exterior was a man who had fought his way up from nothing. The son of a factory worker and a nurse, Richard had coded his first app in a college dorm room and never looked back. "I've stepped on some toes," he admitted. "Made some enemies. That happens when you disrupt industries. But I've never forgotten where I came from." As the evening progressed, Maya found herself drawn to his passion when he spoke about his vision for technology that could help ordinary people build wealth. It aligned with her own desire for financial systems that worked for everyone, not just the privileged few. "My parents worked hard their whole lives but never got ahead," Richard said, swirling the wine in his glass. "My father's pension disappeared when the factory closed. My mother picked up double shifts to put me through college. I promised myself I'd create something that would help people like them. That's why I do what I do," Maya found herself saying. "My grandparents lost everything in a retirement scam. My grandmother had to move in with us when I was in high school. She was so ashamed, felt like she'd been foolish. But she wasn't. The system was designed to confuse her, to take advantage." Richard reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "We're not so different, you and I. We're both trying to fix broken systems, just from different angles." Maya told him about her work investigating financial crimes, her passion for exposing those who cheated the system. "So you're the sheriff of Wall Street?" Richard teased. "Someone has to be," she replied. "You'd be surprised how many seemingly respectable people are running sophisticated scams." The conversation flowed easily, from serious topics to playful banter. 3 hours passed before Maya realized how late it had become. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Early meeting tomorrow." "Let me drive you home," Richard offered. "I have my car," she replied. "But thank you for dinner. It was unexpectedly nice." "High praise indeed," Richard laughed. "Enough to warrant a second date?" Maya studied him for a moment. "I think it might be." That second date led to a third, and by then Maya knew she was falling for him. There was a genuineness to Richard that contrasted with the artifice she often encountered in her work. When he looked at her, she felt seen, not just the polished professional she presented to the world, but the woman beneath who still missed her brother, who still called her parents every Sunday, who still dreamed of making a difference. By their 10th date, they were inseparable. Richard introduced her to the board of Hayes Innovations, proudly telling them about her work exposing financial fraud. Maya brought him to Sunday dinner at her parents' home in Roxbury, where her father grilled him about his intentions, and her mother not so subtly mentioned her desire for grandchildren. "Your family is wonderful," Richard said afterward, as they drove back to his penthouse. "They remind me of men, straightforward, caring, no pretense." "They liked you," Maya admitted. "Dad doesn't usually warm up to people so quickly." "And you?" Richard asked, glancing over at her. "Have you warmed up to me?" Maya laughed. "I think that ship has sailed, don't you?" 6 months after their first meeting, Richard proposed on a private beach in Santorini. The Mediterranean sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded Maya of the watercolors her grandmother used to paint. "I know it seems fast," Richard said, holding out a ring that caught the sunset like a captured flame. "But when you know, you know. You make me better, Maya. You keep me honest." The ring was elegant but not ostentatious, a round diamond in a vintage setting, exactly what she would have chosen for herself. Later, she would wonder if that had been Victoria's influence already, if the other woman had somehow helped select the perfect ring to ensnare Maya's heart. But in that moment, with the waves lapping at the shore and Richard looking at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever had. Maya said yes, without hesitation. The wedding was intimate, just close friends and family on Richard's estate outside Boston. Maya wore her grandmother's restored gown, carried wildflowers, and promised to love Richard Hayes for the rest of her life. Her father cried when he walked her down the aisle, whispering, "Marcus would be so proud of you today, baby girl." For the first 2 years they were blissfully happy. Maya continued her work, now as a consultant taking on special cases that interested her. Richard expanded his business into sustainable technologies. They traveled, donated to causes they believed in, and talked about starting a family. Richard surprised her with a home office designed specifically for her consulting work, complete with the most advanced technology and ergonomic furniture. Maya helped Richard establish a foundation that provided technology education for underprivileged youth, sitting on the board and ensuring the funds were used effectively. "We make a good team," Richard often said, and Maya had to agree. They balanced each other, her meticulous attention to detail complementing his big-picture vision, his optimism softening her skepticism, her grounding presence helping him stay focused when his ideas threatened to scatter in too many directions. Then came the accident. Maya had been investigating a particularly complex Ponzi scheme when her car was forced off the road late one night. It happened on a quiet stretch of highway outside Boston, rain falling in sheets across her windshield. The last thing she remembered was headlights appearing suddenly behind her, moving too fast, pushing her toward the guardrail, and then nothing. She woke up 3 days later in a hospital room filled with flowers. Her parents were asleep in chairs beside her bed, her mother's hand still holding hers even in sleep. The pain came first, then the realization, then the doctor's gentle confirmation. The spinal injury had left her paralyzed from the waist down. The police never found the other driver. "It doesn't change anything," Richard insisted in the hospital, holding her hand so tightly it almost hurt. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. "We'll get through this together. The best specialists, the best care, whatever you need." Maya had looked at him through a haze of pain medication and grief, wanting desperately to believe him. "Everything's changed, Richard. Everything." "Not us," he had promised, kissing her forehead. "Never us." The first months were a blur of surgeries, specialists, and a pain so constant that Maya sometimes forgot what it felt like to live without it. Richard was there through all of it, taking calls in hospital corridors, working remotely from her room, postponing meetings to attend her therapy sessions. At first, he was true to his word. The best doctors were flown in from around the world. Their home was renovated to be fully accessible, with wider doorways, a state-of-the-art elevator, an adapted kitchen, and a bathroom that allowed Maya as much independence as possible. Richard attended every therapy session, learned about every aspect of her care, and never once complained about the toll it was taking on his work or their social life. Her parents stayed for the first month, her mother cooking the comfort foods of Maya's childhood: mac and cheese, fried chicken, sweet potato pie. "You need to keep your strength up," she would say, ignoring Maya's protests that she wasn't hungry. "Your body's fighting hard. You need to feed it." Tanisha visited almost daily, bringing gossip from the outside world, painting Maya's nails, doing her hair when Maya couldn't summon the energy to care about her appearance. "Just because you're laid up doesn't mean you can't look good," she would say, wielding a hairbrush with authority. But as the months passed, something shifted. Richard worked later, traveled more. The intimate conversations that had been the foundation of their relationship grew shorter, more superficial. The warmth in his eyes when he looked at her dimmed, replaced by something that looked too much like pity for Maya's comfort. She noticed it first in small ways. He would check his phone more frequently when they were together. How he started sleeping in the guest room. "Just so I don't disturb you," he'd explained. How his kisses became perfunctory, landing on her cheek or forehead rather than her lips. "It's just a stressful time with the new acquisition," he would say when she asked if everything was okay. Or, "The board is pressuring me about the quarterly numbers. Nothing for you to worry about." But Maya did worry. Not just about his growing distance, but about herself. The woman she saw in the mirror was a stranger thinner, with shadows under her eyes, the vibrant confidence she'd always possessed dimmed by pain and dependence. Some days, it took all her energy just to get dressed and into her wheelchair. On the worst days, she didn't bother at all, staying in bed with the curtains drawn. "This isn't you, Maya," her mother scolded during a weekend visit, pulling open the curtains to let light flood the bedroom. "You've always been a fighter. Where's that fight now?" The question lingered after her parents returned to their home in Atlanta. Where was her fight? Had it been left on that rainy road with the use of her legs? Maya tried to understand Richard's distance. She focused on her recovery, on regaining her independence. She even took on a few consulting cases, working from home, finding that her mind was still as sharp as ever, even if her body had betrayed her. The work helped, giving her purpose beyond endless physical therapy and doctor's appointments. "You're pushing yourself too hard," Richard said, finding her at her desk at midnight, surrounded by financial statements and spreadsheets. "I need this," Maya replied, not looking up. "I need to feel useful again." "You don't have to be useful to be valuable," Richard said, but the words rang hollow. They both knew he had been avoiding spending time with her. They both pretended not to know why. The distance between them grew, a chasm wider than the space between her wheelchair and his standing form. Maya tried to bridge it, suggesting date nights, asking about his work, even proposing they see a counselor together. Richard agreed to everything but was present for nothing, his mind always elsewhere. Then one evening, Richard's phone buzzed on the counter while he was in the shower. Maya wasn't the type to snoop, but the message preview caught her eye as she wheeled past. "Missing you already. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for Paris next week." Maya sat very still, her world suddenly shifting on its axis. There was an explanation, she told herself. There had to be. Maybe his assistant confirming travel plans. But deep down she knew. The pieces that hadn't quite fit for months suddenly locked into place. She waited until Richard emerged from the shower, towel wrapped around his waist, water droplets still clinging to his shoulders. Once, she would have pulled him toward her, traced those droplets with her fingertips. Now, she simply held out his phone. "You have a message," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Richard's face changed as he saw the screen. Surprise, then guilt, then resignation passing over his features like storm clouds. "Maya, I can explain." "Please do," she interrupted, wheeling backward to give herself space. "Explain how you've been lying to me. Explain who V is and what you'll be doing with her in Paris next week." But when she confronted Richard, his reaction told her everything. "I never meant for this to happen," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Victoria is just someone I met through work. It started as friendship, but after your accident, things have been difficult, Maya." Difficult. The word hung between them like a judgment. "I'm sorry my disability has been so difficult for you." "That's not what I meant." Richard ran his hands through his hair, a gesture she had once found endearing. Now it just seemed like a stalling tactic. "You're different now. Not just physically, you're withdrawn, focused only on your recovery and your work. I'm trying to rebuild my life. Maya's voice rose, all the frustration of the past month spilling out. The life someone tried to take from me. I know, and I admire that. But I can't put my life on hold indefinitely. The words stung like a slap. Maya felt the impact of them deep in her chest, where her heart was breaking. Your life isn't on hold, you're living it just with someone else. Richard didn't deny it. His silence was confirmation enough. Victoria understands the pressures I'm under, he finally said, as if that explained everything. Normal? Maya supplied, the bitterness she'd been swallowing for months rising to the surface. Unlike your broken wife? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Maya wheeled herself to the window, looking out at the garden she once loved to tend. The roses she had planted were blooming, their beauty a mockery of the decay inside the house. How long has it been going on? Richard hesitated, and she knew he was considering a lie. The truth, she demanded. For once. 6 months, Richard admitted. Maya, I'm sorry. I still care for you. I'll always make sure you're taken care of. The condescension in his voice as if she were a charity case. A responsibility rather than a partner was the final insult. Maya turned back to face him, a new resolve hardening within her. I want a divorce. Richard looked shocked, as if he'd expected her to fight for him, to beg him to stay. His surprise was almost comical. Did he believe her disability had robbed her of her self-respect as well as her mobility? Maya, we can work through this, he said, reaching for her hand. She pulled it away. I can end things with Victoria. No. The word came out forceful, definitive. You've made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Her voice was steady despite the pain crushing her chest. I won't be someone you stay with out of guilt or obligation. Richard knelt beside her wheelchair, bringing himself to her eye level. Is that what you think this is? Guilt? What would you call it? Maya asked. It's certainly not love. Not anymore. We have a history, Richard said. We've built a life together. And you've been building another one with Victoria. Maya's eyes were dry, her grief too deep for tears. I won't share you, Richard, and I won't be your burden. You're not a burden, he protested, but the relief in his eyes betrayed him. He wanted a way out but had been too cowardly to ask for it himself. Over the next weeks, Maya learned more about Victoria Langa, 28-year-old marketing executive, from Richard's Boston office. Beautiful, ambitious, and by all accounts, madly in love with Richard. Platinum blonde with pale blue eyes and the kind of slender figure that seemed designed for couture clothing. Victoria was everything Maya wasn't, especially now. Photos of them appeared in society pages. Richard and Victoria at charity galas, at restaurant openings, at the symphony, looking like the perfect power couple. The gossip columns hinted at wedding bells, barely acknowledging that Richard was still legally married. One particularly cruel article referred to Maya as Hayes' soon-to-be ex, who was tragically paralyzed in an accident last year, as if her entire identity had been reduced to her disability and her failed marriage. Maya moved into the guest house on the property while divorce proceedings began. Richard offered her a generous settlement, the house, a substantial alimony, shares in his company. Maya surprised everyone by asking for very little, a modest lump sum, her car adapted for her disability, and her personal belongings. You're entitled to half of everything? Her lawyer insisted during a meeting in her temporary home. He's worth over $2 billion, and he's the one who cheated. Plus, with your disability. I know what I'm entitled to, Maya cut him off. And I know what I want. The lawyer, A sharp-dressed man with gray at his temples looked at her as if she'd lost her mind. Mrs. Hayes, thinking clearly, "This settlement will determine your future security." "I'm thinking very clearly," Maya replied. "And my name is Maya Johnson. I'll be taking back my name." What Maya didn't tell her lawyer, or anyone, was that she had received an anonymous email shortly after discovering Richard's affair. The message contained financial records, offshore account numbers, and internal communications from Hayes Innovations documents suggesting that Richard's empire was built on more than just innovation and hard work. Maya recognized the signs immediately. As a financial fraud investigator, she had seen similar patterns before, but she needed more evidence before she could be certain. So while Richard planned his new life with Victoria, Maya began her own investigation. Working from the guest house, she followed money trails, uncovered hidden accounts, and pieced together a troubling picture of her husband's business dealings. It wasn't that Hayes Innovations was entirely fraudulent. The core business was legitimate and profitable. But Richard had apparently been siphoning investor funds, manipulating stock prices, and hiding losses through a complex web of shell companies. The scale was staggering. More disturbing were the connections Maya uncovered to known financial criminals, people she had investigated in the past. Had one of them been responsible for her accident? Had Richard known about it? She couldn't prove it, but the timing was suspicious. Maya debated going to the authorities immediately, but something held her back. The evidence, while compelling, wasn't airtight. And there was something else-y pattern in the more recent transactions that caught her attention. Someone else was skimming from Richard's accounts. Someone with inside access who knew exactly how to cover their tracks. Someone who had been carefully, systematically draining money from Richard's offshore accounts for months. Victoria Lang. Maya dug deeper and discovered that Victoria Lang had cycled through several identities over the past decade. Before meeting Richard, she had been linked to at least 2 other wealthy men who had subsequently lost significant amounts of money in bad investments. She was good, changing her appearance just enough each time to avoid recognition, creating solid backstories, and always disappearing before authorities got involved. Now she had set her sights on Richard, and he was too infatuated to see the danger. Part of Maya wanted to let it happen, to let Richard face the consequences of his poor judgment. He had betrayed her at her most vulnerable. He deserved whatever was coming. But another part of her, the part that had once loved him deeply, couldn't stand by and watch. Maya had a choice to make. She could expose both Richard and Victoria, sending her ex-husband to prison and stopping Victoria's schemes, or she could find another way to serve justice. The answer came to her one sleepless night as she stared at the ceiling of the guest house, listening to the distant sounds of Richard and Victoria laughing on the main house patio. A plan so perfectly balanced that it made her smile for the first time in months. She would let the divorce proceed quickly and quietly. She would take the small settlement that would make Richard believe she was broken and defeated. She would watch him marry Victoria, believing he had won. And then, when the moment was right, she would reveal just enough truth to save Richard from financial ruin while ensuring Victoria faced justice for her crimes. It wasn't about revenge. It was about something Maya valued far more: justice. The wedding day. The same day as the divorce, just hours after the court made it official, Richard and Victoria were married in the garden of his estate. Maya could hear the music and laughter from her window in the guest house, where she was packing the last of her belongings. The DJ was playing the same song that had been Maya and Richard's first dance at their wedding. She wondered if Victoria knew, if Richard remembered, Probably not. Memory was selective that way, filtering out inconvenient truths to make room for new narratives. Maya wheeled to the window, peering through the curtains at the celebration. White tents dotted the lawn, fairy lights strung between them, casting a warm glow as dusk settled. Waitstaff in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Everything was picture-perfect, just as Victoria had no doubt planned. Maya's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "It's done. All accounts frozen as of 5 p.m. Arrest warrant issued for Victoria Lang, alias Victoria Mercer, alias Vanessa Lewis. FBI moving in at 6 p.m. Maya checked her watch. 5:30 p.m. She had 30 minutes. She had spent weeks working with her former colleague at the FBI, feeding him information about Victoria's activities while carefully protecting Richard from the full extent of the investigation. The FBI was interested in Victoria as part of a larger operation targeting sophisticated romance scams. Maya had provided them with everything they needed while extracting a promise that Richard would be treated as a victim rather than an accomplice as long as he cooperated fully. Maya wheeled herself out to the garden, staying in the shadows of the hedges. The ceremony was over, and guests in expensive attire mingled on the lawn, champagne glasses glinting in the late afternoon sun. A photographer directed Richard and Victoria for portraits, their matching smiles bright and confident. Victoria's wedding dress was a marvel of designer craftsmanship, its silhouette emphasizing her slim waist and flowing in graceful waves to the ground. Richard looked happier than Maya had seen him in months, his hand resting possessively on the small of Victoria's back. They looked perfect together, two beautiful people with matching bright smiles and bright futures. If only they knew what was coming. Maya sent a text to Richard. "Need to speak with you urgently. Guest house. Come alone. It's about your accounts." 5 minutes later, Richard appeared at her door, annoyance clear on his face. "Maya, this is my wedding day." He had been drinking. Maya could tell from the slight flush on his cheeks and the loosened tie. The celebration had clearly been going on for some time. "You need to listen carefully," Maya said, handing him a folder. "Victoria isn't who you think she is. She's a con artist who has done this before. She's been stealing from your offshore accounts for months." Richard's face flushed with anger. "Is this some kind of sick joke? Some last-ditch attempt to ruin my happiness because you can't stand seeing me move on?" The accusation stung, but Maya had expected it. "Look at the documents, Richard." Her voice was calm. "Check your Cayman account if you don't believe me. The one you think no one knows about." Richard's expression shifted from anger to uncertainty. He pulled out his phone, accessed an app, and his face went pale. "The FBI will be here in..." Maya checked her watch. 20 minutes to arrest Victoria." "My accounts? I'm the victim here." "Are you?" Maya held his gaze. "Because I also found evidence of your financial fraud going back years. The FBI has that information too." Richard sank into a chair, his perfect wedding day crumbling around him. The glass of champagne he'd been holding slipped from his fingers, spilling on the hardwood floor. He didn't seem to notice. "You're sending me to prison?" "Not necessarily," Maya said. "I've arranged for a deal. If you cooperate fully against Victoria, return the stolen investor funds, and step down from Hayes Innovations, the FBI will focus on prosecuting Victoria rather than you." "You've destroyed everything," Richard whispered, and for a moment he looked lost, a boy playing at being a man, suddenly confronted with the consequences of his actions. Maya shook her head. "You did that yourself, Richard. I'm giving you a chance to save something from the wreckage. More than you gave me." A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, They could see FBI agents entering the garden, guests scattering in confusion as men and women in dark suits and windbreakers converged on the main tent. "I loved you once," Maya said, her voice softening. "Enough to want to spare you from the worst consequences of your actions. But make no mistake, this is justice, not mercy." Richard looked at her with new understanding. "You knew all along. That's why you didn't fight the divorce or demand more in the settlement." "I knew what was coming," Maya acknowledged. "For both of you." They watched through the window as Victoria was handcuffed and led away from her own wedding reception, her white dress a stark contrast to the dark suits of the FBI agents surrounding her. Her face was a mask of rage and disbelief as she scanned the crowd, perhaps looking for Richard, perhaps looking for an escape route. There would be none. "What happens now?" Richard asked, his voice hollow. "Now you cooperate. You make amends where you can. You rebuild what's left of your life." Maya wheeled toward the door. "My car is waiting. I'm leaving Boston tonight." "Where will you go?" Maya smiled slightly. "That's no longer your concern." As she left the guest house, a sleek black car waiting at the end of the drive, Maya felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. She had balanced the scales as best she could, ensuring that justice was served without allowing vengeance to consume her. The driver loaded her wheelchair into the trunk as Maya settled into the back seat. Through the window, she could see Richard standing on the porch of the guest house, watching her leave. She didn't wave. Some goodbyes needed no gestures. As the car pulled away from the estate, Maya didn't look back. The past with all its joy and pain was behind her now. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also possibility. And for the first time in a long time, Maya found herself looking forward to discovering what came next. 6 months later, the small cafe overlooked a quiet beach in Portugal. Maya sat at a corner table, her wheelchair positioned to give her the best view of the ocean. She sipped her coffee and opened her laptop to check the news. The morning sun glinted off the water, turning it into a shifting mosaic of blue and gold. Maya had rented a small house nearby, a single-story structure with wide doorways and adapted bathrooms that made navigation in her wheelchair easier. The locals had embraced her, the American woman who spoke halting Portuguese and always had a smile for everyone. On the screen, headlines about Richard Hayes appeared in her customized news feed. Richard Hayes had pleaded guilty to lesser charges of financial misconduct and received a suspended sentence in exchange for his testimony against Victoria Lang and the return of misappropriated funds. Hayes Innovations had been restructured under new leadership, with most jobs saved and investors largely made whole. Victoria Lang, meanwhile, had been sentenced to 15 years for fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. Investigators had linked her to similar schemes in 3 countries, bilking wealthy men out of millions. The press had dubbed her the Black Widow of Wall Street, though no one had actually adjusted bank accounts. Maya closed the laptop and turned her attention back to the ocean. Her new life was quieter than she had ever imagined, but there was peace in the simplicity. No more 80-hour work weeks. No more chasing financial criminals through paper trails and bank statements. Just the rhythm of days marked by sunrise and sunset, the gentle lapping of waves against the shore, and the gradual healing of both body and spirit. "Is this seat taken?" The voice made her turn. Michael Chen, her former colleague from the Financial Crimes Unit, stood beside her table, looking more relaxed in casual clothes than she had ever seen him. "It's a free country," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "At least this one is." Michael sat down, studying her face. "You look well. Better than when I saw you in Boston." Amazing what taking down 2 financial criminals can do for one's complexion, Maya replied with a small smile. After leaving Richard's estate on his wedding day, Maya had contacted Michael, who had been her mentor before she went private. She had given him enough evidence to pursue both Richard and Victoria, along with her testimony, before disappearing to start fresh. "The Bureau is still trying to figure out how you put it all together," Michael said, "especially while recovering from your injury." Maya shrugged. "I had nothing but time and motivation. And now? What does the great Maya Johnson do with herself in Portugal?" "I'm not Maya Johnson anymore," she reminded him. Her new identity was safer, cleaner, a fresh start. "And I consult, remotely, for clients who appreciate discretion and thoroughness." Michael nodded. "The Bureau would take you back in a heartbeat. Your work on the Hayes Lang case was brilliant." "I'm done with that life." Maya looked out at the ocean again. "I've found something better." "And what's that?" "Peace," she said simply. "No revenge fantasies. No looking over my shoulder." They talked for another hour, Michael updating her on mutual acquaintances and the aftermath of the case. As he prepared to leave, he hesitated. "There's something else you should know," he said, "about your accident." Maya felt a chill despite the warm air. "What about it?" "We found evidence linking it to Marcus Jennings." The name hit Maya like a physical blow. Marcus Jennings had been her first major case, a hedge fund manager she had helped send to prison for a massive fraud scheme that had wiped out the retirement savings of hundreds of families. He had threatened her during the trial, but she had dismissed it as the empty words of a desperate man. "Jennings hired someone to run you off the road," Michael continued. "He wanted to scare you, not kill you. The paralysis wasn't part of the plan." Maya absorbed this information silently. It hadn't been connected to Richard's business dealings after all. Just an old enemy with a long memory. "Jennings is back in prison," Michael assured her. "Additional 20 years. He won't hurt anyone else." After Michael left, Maya sat watching the waves, processing everything. The truth about her accident brought closure she hadn't realized she needed. Richard had been guilty of many things, but not that. In an odd way, it made it easier to let go of the last threads of anger she'd been holding on to. Her phone buzzed with a text from David, the local tour guide who had been showing her the hidden gems of the Portuguese coast. "Still on for dinner? Found a place with the best seafood in town. Fully accessible." Maya smiled as she typed her reply. "Absolutely. Pick me up at 7. David had appeared in her life unexpectedly, offering to help when she struggled with her wheelchair on the cobblestone streets during her first week in town. He was kind without being pitying, funny without trying too hard, and seemed completely unfazed by her disability. Their friendship had evolved naturally over shared meals and conversations. He was divorced, taught history at the local university, and had no interest in the corporate world she had left behind. With him, she was just Maya, not a victim, not an investigator, not the ex-wife of a disgraced billionaire. As Maya waited for David that evening, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had lost much: her marriage, her mobility, her former identity. But she had gained something profound in return: the knowledge that she was stronger than any circumstance life could throw at her. The restaurant David chose overlooked the harbor. The hostess greeted Maya warmly, leading them to a corner table already set up to accommodate her wheelchair. No awkward adjustments, no pitying glance, just normal courtesy. Maya appreciated these small moments of dignity more than she could express. As they ate grilled fish and talked about a local festival coming up that weekend, Maya felt a contentment she had never known in her high-stakes former life. "You're smiling," David observed. "More than usual, I mean." "I got some closure today," Maya explained. "About the accident." David knew the broad outlines of her story enough to understand, but not so much that it defined her in his eyes. "That's good, isn't it?" "It is," she agreed. "It means the past is truly the past now." David's dark eyes were thoughtful as he reached across the table, his hand covering hers. His skin was a warm brown against her deeper tone, calloused from his hobby of restoring old boats. "You've never really told me what happened, not the details." "It's a long story," Maya said. "I like long stories," David replied. "And we have all night." So Maya told him not everything, but more than she had shared with anyone since leaving Boston. About the accident, the betrayal, the discovery of Victoria's true nature, and Richard's crimes. About the choice she had made to pursue justice rather than vengeance. David listened without interruption, his expression shifting between shock, anger on her behalf, and admiration. "You're remarkable," he said when she finished. "Most people would have been consumed by bitterness." "I came close," Maya admitted. "There were days when all I wanted was to see Richard suffer. But in the end, that would have changed who I am, and I've lost enough without losing myself too." After dinner they strolled along the harbor promenade, Maya's wheelchair keeping pace with David's relaxed steps. The evening air was perfumed with salt and grilling seafood from the restaurants lining the waterfront. "I have something to ask you," David said, suddenly seeming nervous. "The school break starts next week, and I'm taking my boat down the coast for 10 days. There's a lift I had installed that would make it accessible for you. Would you consider coming with me?" Maya looked up at him, surprised by the invitation and her own immediate desire to accept. "Are you sure? The boat is adapted, and I'm a good sailor." He knelt so they were at eye level. "But if you're not comfortable, I understand completely." Maya thought about fear, how it had nearly consumed her after the accident, how she had pushed through it to bring Richard and Victoria to justice, how it still sometimes whispered to her that she should play it safe, stay in her comfort zone. And then she thought about joy, the kind she had begun to rediscover in this new life, the kind she saw reflected in David's hopeful expression. "I'd love to," she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "As long as you promise not to make me walk the plank if I turn out to be a terrible sailor." David's face broke into a delighted grin. "The only promising I'm doing is that you'll see the most beautiful coastline in Europe and eat the best food of your life."